The small coastal town of Clearwater was the kind of place where time seemed to slow down. The air was thick with the scent of salt and seaweed, and the sound of gulls carried over the docks where fishermen mended their nets. Everyone knew everyone, or at least they thought they did. It was a place of routines, quiet lives, and simple days. But even in such still waters, a single act could send ripples that reached farther than anyone could imagine. It all began on a chilly November morning when an old man named Walter left his small, weather-beaten house to walk to the local cafe. He had lived alone since his wife passed 5 years ago. His days had fallen into a steady rhythm: wake up, feed his cat, take a slow walk to Benny's cafe, and sit by the window with a cup of black coffee. Walter wasn't unfriendly, but years of loneliness had made his world smaller. He spoke little, smiled rarely, and kept to himself. That morning, as he made his way through the town square, he noticed a young boy struggling with a bicycle near the fountain. The chain had come off, and his small hands were smeared with grease. Walter would normally have passed by. Helping wasn't part of his routine anymore, but something in the boy's determined face made him stop. "You need a hand there, son?" Walter asked, his voice gravelly from years of silence. The boy looked up, surprised but relieved. "Yes, sir. The chain slipped off, and I can't get it back." Walter set his coffee cup on the stone ledge and knelt beside the bike. His old fingers worked clumsily at first, but soon, muscle memory took over. Within minutes, the chain was back in place. He gave the pedal a spin, and it turned smoothly. "There you go," he said, wiping his hands on his jacket. "Thank you, sir," the boy beamed. "I'm Liam. I was trying to get to school before the bell." Walter nodded. "Well, you better hurry then. Don't want to be late." As the boy sped off, he turned and shouted, "Thanks again," before disappearing down the street. Walter stood there for a moment, watching him go. It was a small thing, barely a blip in his day, but it stirred something warm in his chest. For the first time in a long while, he smiled. When Liam reached school that morning, he was still thinking about the old man's kindness. It had felt like something rare, something worth remembering. Later that day, when he saw a classmate, Emma, sitting alone at lunch, he thought about how a small act could make a big difference. Emma had recently moved to Clearwater and hadn't made many friends yet. Without overthinking, Liam walked over with his tray. "Hey, you can sit with us if you want," he said. Emma hesitated, then smiled gratefully. "Thanks." That invitation marked the start of a friendship. Over the next few weeks, Liam and Emma became close, and she began to feel like she belonged in her new school. She started smiling more, participating in class, and even joined the art club. One afternoon after school, Emma noticed her art teacher, Ms. Daniels, sitting alone in the classroom looking unusually tired. The teacher had stayed behind to help another student earlier, and now her desk was buried under papers and paintbrushes. Emma walked up to her. "Ms. Daniels, can I help clean up?" The teacher looked up, surprised. "Oh, that's very kind of you, Emma. You don't have to." "I want to," Emma said simply. Together, they put away the supplies, and Emma chatted about her latest painting. Ms. Daniels found herself laughing for the first time that day. She had been feeling weighed down by personal worries, a sick parent, overdue bills, but Emma's small kindness lightened her heart. That night, as Ms. Daniels sat at her kitchen table grading papers, she thought about the student's simple gesture. It reminded her that even when life felt heavy, goodness still existed in small moments. The next morning, she decided to act on that reminder. On her way to school, she stopped at a bakery and bought an extra cup of coffee and a pastry. When she reached the classroom, she placed them on the desk of Mr. Thompson, the history teacher who shared the adjoining classroom. He was new to the school, quiet, and often looked like he carried the weight of the world on his shoulders. When he saw the coffee, he looked around in confusion. "Morning gift," Ms. Daniels said with a grin. "You looked like you could use one." He chuckled softly, surprised but grateful. "You have no idea how much I needed this." "Thank you." That small act brightened Mr. Thompson's entire day. He carried that warmth with him through his lessons, and for the first time since moving to Clearwater, he felt like he belonged there. During his last period class, he noticed a student named Jacob sitting quietly, looking troubled. After class ended, Mr. Thompson called him over. "Everything okay, Jacob?" Jacob hesitated, then shrugged. Just stuff at home. My dad lost his job. Things are kinda rough. Mr. Thompson nodded gently. That's tough. But I want you to know, sometimes hard times pass faster than you think. And if you ever need to talk or need help with school stuff, my door's open. Jacob didn't say much, but he left the room feeling seen for the first time in weeks. That evening, instead of going straight home, he stopped by the small grocery store where he worked part-time to help his mom. As he was leaving, he saw an elderly woman trying to carry 2 heavy bags to her car. Let me help you with that, he offered without hesitation. The woman smiled, surprised. That's very kind of you, dear. He carried her bags and even helped her load them into her car. As she thanked him, she said, You remind me of my grandson. He's far away now, but you've made me feel less alone today. When the woman, Mrs. Albright, got home, her heart was lighter than it had been in days. Her late husband had passed a year ago, and she had felt the ache of loneliness ever since. The boy's kindness reminded her that there was still goodness around her. That evening, she decided to bake a few extra pies, something she hadn't done since her husband's passing, and brought them to her neighbors. One of those neighbors was Sarah, a single mother struggling to make ends meet. When Mrs. Albright knocked on her door with the warm pie, Sarah was touched almost to tears. Oh, you didn't have to, she said, taking the pie. I know, Mrs. Albright replied softly. But sometimes we all need a little sweetness. That pie wasn't just dessert, it was a symbol of care in a world that often moved too fast. Sarah shared it with her 2 young children, who hadn't seen her smile that widely in weeks. Later that night, after tucking them into bed, she sat down at her small kitchen table and thought about how kindness had found its way to her door. The next morning, Sarah noticed her neighbor, a delivery driver named Mike, struggling to start his old van. She knew he relied on it for work and couldn't afford expensive repairs. Without thinking twice, she walked over. Hey, my brother works at the auto shop in town. He can take a look and won't charge you much. Let me call him for you. Mike was stunned. That would be amazing. Thank you. Sarah made the call, and by that afternoon, the van was fixed at no cost. Mike was beyond grateful. As he drove through town, delivering packages, he couldn't shake the feeling of gratitude. When he stopped for lunch, he noticed a homeless man sitting near the park bench, shivering in the cold. Without thinking, he bought an extra sandwich and coffee, walked over, and handed them to the man. Here you go, buddy. Stay warm, all right. The man's eyes filled with tears. God bless you. Mike smiled and drove off, not realizing how deeply that small act would matter. That night, the homeless man, whose name was Raymond, ate the warm food under the glow of a streetlight. For the first time in weeks, he felt seen, not as someone invisible, but as a human being. The next morning, when he found a lost wallet near the park bench, he didn't hesitate. He walked several blocks to the address on the ID and returned it to its owner, a woman named Claire, who looked shocked when she opened the door. My goodness, she said, taking the wallet. I didn't even realize I'd lost it. There's cash in here, too, you could have kept it. Raymond just shook his head. Didn't seem right. Claire smiled. You're an honest man. Thank you. She gave him some food and clothes before he left. Later that day, Claire was driving through town when she stopped at Benny's cafe to grab a coffee. As she paid, she saw an elderly man sitting by the window, the same one who had started the Ripple days ago. Walter. Claire recognized him. He was the one who used to come in with his wife years ago, always sitting at the same spot. Something about seeing him alone tugged at her heart. When she paid for her coffee, she leaned toward the cashier and whispered, "Add his drink to my bill. Don't tell him who paid." When Walter later went to pay his bill, the cashier said, "It's already covered. Someone wanted to thank you for being you." Walter looked confused at first, then smiled softly. He lifted his cup, as if to toast the invisible giver. As he sat there, the same warmth he'd felt days ago when he helped the boy returned. He looked out the window at the town, the people passing, the world moving, and realized that maybe his small act hadn't just fixed a bike. Maybe it had started something larger, something unseen. That night, Walter went home and sat by his window, watching the sun sink below the horizon. He thought about his late wife and what she used to say, one kind act is like tossing a pebble in a pond, you never know how far the ripples go. And though he couldn't see the ripples himself, they were there, stretching across the town in a quiet, beautiful chain of compassion. From a boy's repaired bicycle to a teacher's coffee, from a neighbor's pie to a stranger's meal, every act of kindness had built upon another, linking hearts that might never meet but would forever be connected. In clear water, life went on as usual, the sea breeze still rolled in, the gulls still cried overhead, but beneath its calm surface, a silent truth glimmered, that one good deed, no matter how small, could travel endlessly, changing lives along the way.